are listening to Africana Woman with Chulu. The Africana Woman is a live show that highlights our stories in our own words. We believe that to attract the lives that we truly desire, we must smash the culture of silence around the things that hold us back or keep us stuck. In our tribe, rest assured, you are not alone. The Africana Woman is for you, by you, and about you, no matter where you are in the world. The Africana Woman highlighted this week is Muma Sinkala. Muma is a banking and finance professional with a passion for the arts, technology, and social impact. She has been recognized as one of the 100 Tech Up Women in the UK. She is a member of the Institute of Coding, and she hopes to use her skills and influence by merging social impact and emerging technology to make an even wider impact in the lives of others. She is a board member on 2 charities promoting the use of technology and business skills for disadvantaged women. She's also collaborating with charities and social enterprises to create a platform that will bring global resources locally. She also curates art events for contemporary African artists with a focus on raising the profile of the African artists worldwide. Today, we are talking about racism in Africa. It is a heavy topic, but I first wanted to celebrate with you because this is the season finale of the Africana Woman Season 1. I'm so excited that we made it here, and I hope that you have found this to be valuable. And thank you so much for coming back week after week to listen to the Africana Woman. So let's dive into our conversation around racism in Africa.
I'm just a person who just really believes in enabling other people, specifically, more importantly, women. I know some men are going to say this is a tired argument. It's not, in my opinion. I feel like the work begins in unlearning. That's my personal opinion. Once you start unlearning ideas that have been put in your head about what other women who become successful are like, like the whole thing about if a woman is successful, she's bitchy, she's never going to help you. That's not true. When I get to a point where people deem successful, whatever that success may mean to them, I want to be approachable. I want somebody to be like, do you know what? That person enabled me just through their words, the way they spoke to me. They spoke to me with respect, regardless of whether I was in a job which people deem as small or big or whatever. More importantly, they empowered me to see that I can do anything if I just try. And I feel like that's my purpose. My purpose is to there's that, I think, a saying that Muhammad Ali said, like, I will be the spark or something like that ignites many people. And I believe that. I feel that way, even when I talk to people, and I feel like it's everyone's purpose, probably. You're a spark in different ways. Some people are a spark in a quiet way. Some people are a spark in a loud way. But it's in who you are and what you do. And you can choose what you want to do with that. And I want to, empower women a lot. And men. Wherever you are, I want to, we can do things.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, I'm sure you have, this last week has been very difficult and challenging. I'm sure you have not been able to avoid seeing how our Black brothers and sisters in the United States are crying out, with the recorded, I would call it, execution of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And just because they're recorded, but then there's so many other injustices that are happening. But because this has been recorded and has just spread all over the world like wildfire, it's basically brought it's brought a movement across the world of people rising up and just crying out for justice, but not only justice, change.
Yeah.
Right? So one of the things that I thought it was important to talk about on this platform is racism in Africa. So we all know, and I know, some of these conversations that we're going to be having are difficult and they are uncomfortable. But, you need to have these conversations and be able to speak freely. Even if you find it challenging. So don't think that this is also easy for me, but I am willing to have the conversation. So one of the things that that I have to acknowledge is that racism does exist in Africa, right? So we have all sorts of colored people in Africa. You've got your white people, you've got your Arabs, you've got Indians, you've got a whole plethora of different types of people that come to Africa, right? And for me, one of the problematic things is how, I literally shudder when I think, okay, here's an African, he's got 2 degrees, and he moves to, I don't know, another country, let's say Canada or the USA, and he's called an immigrant. Then here is a white person or any other race with no degree comes to Africa and suddenly they're king. And they're called an expat. So in my opinion, just that term expat is racist. So I will not be using the word expat for that very reason. In my opinion, they are immigrants because they are basically moving to another country for whether it's, basically to better their lives.
Further your life.
May surprise you, that living in Africa is actually quite ideal. We've got fresh air, we've got organic food, which doesn't cost an arm and a leg. There's a lot of benefits to living here, and that's what people are moving here for.
And
but here we
always
call them
an expatriate gets paid triple or double that what they were earning whatever country they're coming from. So if an expat is coming from England and they were a software developer, they were on 40,000 in England, they'll be on 80 in Zambia. That's the fact. And not only will they be earning that salary, their house will be paid for, their car will be paid for, they get a bigger pension, they get stock investment. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I can't wait to be an expat in my own country. Madness.
I know. So you find that when people come here, one, they'll live in self-segregated communities. They don't socially interact with the natives of that country. And I can think of situations where someone has literally lived in an African country, so it can be in Zambia, for years, but have never actually stepped through the door of a Zambian's house.
No way.
How can you say that you have? I'm telling you. You can't have been, because you've just got your circle, your social circle, and that's what you see. That's the space that you stay in, literally.
You see, that itself is a layer of racism in itself, because even if you're doing it from a place of fear, I don't know if they'll accept me, because that is genuine as well. Some people, they don't want, if they're even coming from a place of genuine, they don't want to offend to the extent where they become offensive, I don't want to end up saying the wrong thing, or if they eat very weird food, I don't want to have to say no, because I know their culture is if you say no to food, then you're disrespectful. Do you get what I mean? So some people are being genuine, but then their genuineness, these are some of the things that are coming up in this whole racist movement, the movement that we're talking about when we're talking about racism, that even your good intentions, you need to question them. You may think your good intentions are good, but ask yourself what they're truly rooted in. accepting of French food? Do you know what I mean? How is it that you're easily accepting of Chinese food or whatever other, places that seem exotic in the world or to, the Western world? Why is it that you're so easily accepting of those things and you will be willing to dip your toe and try? But when it so happens that you happen to come to Africa, the first thing that comes in your head is, ew, they eat with their hands. I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to have to say no. But you're able to eat frog legs and foie gras, which is like the most inhumane thing in my opinion. You know what I mean? But those are little things like that. And that's another thing I feel. I think you need to ask me questions because I'm just gonna go off on a tangent. But I think racism is nuanced. It's very subtle. It's not. It doesn't come in one package.
It is very, very subtle when it's in Africa. It's very, very subtle, and you may not even realize it, but it's there, And one of the other, there's different levels, and like you're saying, it's very subtle. But I think one of the other main issues is hiring discrimination, where we prioritize your own race as the voices that are experts.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you mean by
what
that?
Is your
Please explain that last bit you just said.
Explain.
Yeah, like when you prioritize your own race as the people who are experts. What do you mean?
You have an issue that is in, let's say you want to do I would say, I don't know, you've got an IT issue, a problem in your company. So now you've got the choice between a Zambian company, or should I choose a let's say a white-owned company? So your automatic, hey Sharon, how are you? Your automatic choice is to go for that. But this is from a white person's perspective, though, not from a Zambian just yet. But over the Zambian company, you'd say, well, the white one is probably more experienced, and that's the one that I should go with.
There's a reason for that, but okay. Yeah, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying.
So what are your experiences, though? What are
my experiences? Okay, personally, my experiences are not personal. Like, I think if I said that I've experienced that in Zambia, it would be very wrong of me because I left Zambia when I was 17. And I haven't been like living in Zambia in a way that I've done business like that, directly with like having to tender for tenders or things like that. So I can't say that I've seen it, but it's a cry of my like relatives who are close to me, aunties, uncles, friends, constantly. You see it on Facebook all the time. Need I say more about what just happened in Lusaka with the Chinese guy actually telling a Zambian person, no foreigners allowed? Joke. But, you see that behavior playing out in very little subtle ways, than even more than what that Chinese guy did. But I feel like the question you've asked is very complicated. It's twofold. I think it's twofold because what you say, racism, is both within Zambia, which is a bit like I could call it tribalism. Actually, even racism, because maybe even Zambians are racist against other races, but that's also another topic. You can't really be racist per se if you're the more oppressed. But yeah, but the bigger topic, what you're saying, that people who are from another country will get tenders, and also the people who then come into the country. So let's say I happen to be white British, I happen to come to Zambia, I'm doing well, I start a company. I'm also more likely to tender to people who are non-Zambian. Because not just because it's my fault, because again, we like to blame white people sometimes, but sometimes it's our fault. Because we Zambians have created the culture and the environment that sustains that nonsense. Go to countries like Botswana. Botswana has an almost a zero tolerance for if a foreign person comes into the country. There's rules that exist within Botswana. you cannot have a certain percentage. You can never have more than a certain percentage. For example, if you wanted to buy a mine, you can never buy more than a Botswanan. You can never own more than Botswanan when it comes to owning. So the question then comes into how is the society in Zambia? How are they enabling bad behaviors? How are they creating opportunities for foreigners and for people who continually I'm not saying like all foreigners are racist or it's just foreigners who are racist. I mean, how are Zambians perpetuating the bad behaviors themselves through their own little ideologies that entertain or create opportunities for foreigners to behave in that way? If Zambians emulate it like they were a good shining example, if a foreigner came, the truth is the foreigner will fall in line. Any of us go to China and China has created that strict rule. We fall in line. These are the rules. This is how they work. That is what you will behave in the appropriate way. You're not going to tender to somebody outside the country. You first tender to people within the country. Do you get what I mean? But then there's also the next level, which we can't fail to say, is that sometimes in the way we do business in Zambia, though, there's also something questionable. Not from a corrupt perspective, but from an excellency perspective. So again, there's that idea that you have to question. You can't just say that people just want to tender to somebody else. What are we doing as well wrong that they don't want to tender to Zambians? Both parties, I feel, have to ask the questions. The person who's tendering to other people, are my reasons rooted in racism and in partiality? Like you're impartial. You're not impartial. And the Zambian people as well. How is our own behavior? What do we perpetuate, and what could we do better?
Hey sis, thank you for listening to Africana Woman with Chulu. This show is only possible because of your participation. These are your stories in your own words. There are actually 2 ways that you can be featured in the Africana Woman Network. You can either be a guest blogger on the Africana Woman blog or a guest speaker on the Africana Woman podcast. If any of these interest you, please contact me on africanawoman@gmail.com. to learn more about the procedures to be approved. Now, back to the show.
So one of the things that I actually wanted to focus more on is not so much what other races are doing in terms of racism, but I do believe that we need to look at ourselves and look at our behavior and see, like you've said, whether we are allowing racism to be perpetuated.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, for example, I'll give a few weeks ago, it's not a few weeks ago, let's say 2, when this whole lockdown issue started, I went to buy vegetables from a store, and I was literally the only person that was buying vegetables. And then a white lady walked in. So she started attending, like the attendant started attending to me. Then a white lady walked in and she put down my stuff and then started attending to this other woman. And I was like, and even the white lady was like, no, attend to her. And she's like, no, madam. And I'm just like, no, because the other white lady, because you know, the days where you just say, I don't want to have arguments here. So the white lady said to her, like, attend to her, meaning me. And so then the attendant says, no, her order is big. So that's why I want to do yours, because it's small. And then she looks at me. No, I said, no, you've already started. Please go ahead. I just can't. The other lady left. And then I said to her, what you did was not right.
Oh, you told her?
It just wasn't right.
You told her?
Yes.
Good. And what did she say?
It's excuses. No, madam, because but really, what are you really saying? That you just value, we are paying the same, we've got the same type of money. It's not like hers is more valuable than mine. my order was more, you know? So I'm paying more than this other woman, but you insist on treating that other person more special
So
than.
my view on that is
Mm,
it always goes back to the, colonialism. Always. No matter which way you look at it, the roads always lead to colonialism. Many people, even though free on the outside, are shackled in their minds. And as Bob Marley said, none but ourselves can free our minds. But then when you have to look at Zambia, the majority of people in Zambia, they grow up in a very weird family way, you know. The things that are considered important in most Zambian households have nothing to do with racism. It has nothing with teaching us the value of your importance in your own skin and in your own color, because it's not an issue. And yet we've got problematic conversations that happen even between our own old uncles, grandparents, still calling a white person Bwana, things like that. Do you get what I mean? It's also shown in the behaviors, in that when you're light skinned or lighter skinned, your uncles and aunties will be sitting down and say, "Oh, you're so beautiful, Urikasuma, Urikamsungu." Problematic. That sounds like so subtle, and it's like such not even a big problem, but those are the roots that grow the trees that create a woman wanting to serve the white person over you. Do you understand? Like, that's just one small part. And because these issues are not actual issues within our homes, or they're not spoken about at a young age, we then get to a place where we're older, we're 18, we're working, we're having our own car, driving your own car, you've worked hard, you've got into a place where you're doing whatever you're doing, paying your own bills, and you're in a shop and you're still treated less. And your parents, again using the colonial system, drummed it into your head that if you work hard enough, you get a good degree, you go to a good school, you go abroad, study, and come back, you will be treated like a king. I mean, it's even seen even in just behaviors of when I talk to Zambian people, and they'll be like, I'm Zambian, like other Zambian people. And they'll be like, oh my God, Muma, your accent's changed. It's so amazing. And it makes me cringe. It actually, it's not that I wanted to change my accent. It's just one of those things that happen when you're around, you adopt whatever is around you. And to me, it's such a shameful thing. Like, when people compare it, that same accent thing, they compare it to Mzungu. For me to feel like, oh, like it's a good thing, but you're literally stripping my blackness off and giving me another race as a token so that I can feel good about myself. And those are the subtleties, like we don't even realize the implications. Imagine a little kid, a little child being shown or being talked to like that constantly from a young age. And then he gets to 20 years old, 25, 30, you're being served in a shop. The truth is that thing has been put in your head so well. It's stuck very, very well and nice that you don't even realize it or recognize it as a race issue. You think it's normal. It's so big. And so anyway, yeah, I'll tell you what my solution is. And I think I spoke about it in our last live. But
yeah. But you know what I'm also thinking about how, if you've got a lighter skin, then it's like you're sort of prized. But for some reason, at the same time, you people of mixed race are also kind of discriminated against by, shunned by Black Africans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then it really shocks me. And I'm thinking, there you are bleaching your skin, but then you're shunning this person. Like, where do you think that comes from? Like, I fail to understand that.
Do you understand the level of trauma Africans have gone through? Yesterday, I made a profound statement to a friend, which I think should be like Muma's quote. Yeah? I said something like, it's just hit me that there's no Black person in this world who's not traumatized. None. Not one Black person. Even if you grow up in a perfect family where everything's amazing, the trauma of your ancestors haunts you because you either see it in the news, you see it in the behaviors, even in your own behaviors that you can't even explain. And this drove me 2 years ago to do some research, and I found this lady, American professor. she decided to do the study. It's called epigenetics, and the idea of epigenetics is that we can inherit trauma. She was refuted for so many years when she kept on going on about how the reason why Black people behave how they behave, they've inherited a lot of trauma through slavery, through colonization, whether you grew up in a good family or not, and this should be researched. And she was able to show the direct parallels of the poverty mentality, also the idea that a lot of Black people in the Bronxes, it was infiltrated in their minds to that extent that we're still suffering traumas and we don't even know how to deal with them. We don't know. And then we just cover them up in culture, tradition, and things like that. We keep putting a Band-Aid on. There's so many Band-Aids on in different ways. And a lot of us never get the chance to heal because we rarely have conversations like this in our households, between our lovers, between friends that are so open. And so healing maybe ends up happening when you're older and you're reflecting and you decide to do the healing yourself. But even when you get to that point, a lot of the time, a lot of people are not willing to do that because healing requires pain and it requires you to revisit the past, and not enough people are willing to do that. That is also why I believe it's a very big myth within Africa that going to a therapist is a bad thing, because we're just most of the time unwilling to do that healing work. The real healing work. You can say you talk to your aunties and all that, but it's different. It's different. The things I'll say to my auntie and to my mom are different to what I will say to somebody who I consider a safe space, because it's not even about friendship.
So I think a lot of the times, one, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't know if you're traumatized. You don't know if you have a bias towards other races, or I'll say more specifically white race, right? So what do you think? Can you give like some examples of situations where if you found yourself in that situation and you behaved in a way, then maybe you should examine your thoughts or beliefs. I'll give you an example. The schools in I live in Zambia, so the schools in Zambia, so the ones which are thought to be very good and very prestigious are the ones that have white teachers. So when those white teachers leaves, like one teacher, oh my goodness, the standards have gone down.
Really?
You know what I mean? Like, oh my goodness. I mean, my mother was a teacher, and between her and another teacher at my primary school, they are the teachers when I meet people who went to that school, so old classmates and even people from other grades. Those two teachers, if you hear Miss C, Miss Mulenga, those are the ones that people remember the most, right? Those are the ones that made the most impact. But when a white person left, the standards have gone down.
See what I mean? Oof, that's so deep. Like, we need to really assess. Do you know, to me, it keeps going back to what I'm trying to tell you, Chulu. In Zambia, we don't even recognize it as a problem because we refuse to recognize it as a problem. We refuse to even know. And also, somehow, you can't blame Zambians because at this moment in time, what's the biggest issue in Zambia? Electricity is off, right? What's the other biggest issue in Zambia? I'm not earning enough money, such that an issue like that is not even an issue. Do you get what I mean? Like, people are struggling to do the basics of the basics. How do we start bringing up, not that they're not important, but how do we find a way to create this into like within our homes? Do you get what I mean? How do we find a way to make this a conversation so that people know about it? So that people are aware that we do this thing, because there are times, for example, when as you're growing up, your friends will be like, oh, Muma, when you date this person, you know you change. You may not be aware that you do, but when a person calls you out, you'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know. Or, you know, you speak this way when you're around a certain group of friends. You know, you may not even recognize that you do, because sometimes we mimic behaviors and then you realize, oh, actually, I do. But the point of that is you're given a choice then. In that moment, you're given a choice to do something differently in the next opportunity that you get, because you'll be able to recognize it. But right now, Zambians can't recognize it because nobody calls it out, because nobody sees it as an issue. It's not an issue. It's not a thing. We think that our behaviors and our traumatic way of responding to things, I call it traumatic because we have so much trauma, so many projections that it's not normal. Like I said to you about the same skin color thing, like to look at a person who's light skinned and say you look like Kala and Deke. That's so messed up. Like, who even says that? You know what I mean? It's not normal to see a white person and call them a buana or a boss. Even if the person is lower than you, the automatic response of some Zambian people is they'll see a white guy and they'll be like, oh, a boss. What? What if you're like way more educated than that person, or way more? How has he become or she become your boss? You know? And we need to question those things, but I feel like it will be an unlearning, and a big unlearning has to happen. Of course, at the moment, we've got the movement and the awakening happening, but a big unlearning within Africa is required. I feel personally that the unlearning will be both within homes and within schools, because that's where the most time is spent. And I personally feel for the older generation, we're a bit like, I'm sorry, forget about that. Go to the younger generation. Tell them how to treat themselves better. Tell them how to value themselves when they're growing up. Target women. I say target women. The women are the mothers. Our cultures are centered around mothers and how they teach their kids. Your aunties, and even though men definitely have a very big role to play, but those men are only as good as the women that raise them. They're influenced by the mothers who raise them, the aunties, the conversations they see, the way they see their mother treat herself, the way they see their mother who's light skinned treat her darker skinned sister. You know what I mean? The little subtle conversations that I had in the living room about how this neighbor was cheating with who, he left his wife for a colored girl. Do you get what I mean? And now that colored girl has got a child by that same man. And that child is also now confused. They'll even say things like, that child's confused. Do you get what I mean? Like, we literally then start creating racism on top of our, like, racism within ourselves. And how does that man then grow up? How does his psyche, like, how does he grow up? And how does he view women? How does he view himself? Like, it's a very complex conversation. But I feel when you've created a system that educates the women within this, where we're having conversations like this, other young girls while they're in schools right now can watch lives like these and think differently. The idea that you're given the chance to just think something different from what you know is everything, in my opinion, because it allows you to think from what you know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that COVID has brought is this call from a lot of governments to say, okay, local is laka, buy local. You know what I mean? Let's focus on us promoting our local products. But we live in a society where people just, they're always outward looking, always the best is out there. They always want to buy that. So in the Zambian context, let's say buy a South African project over a Zambia. You know what I mean? It's always outward looking. That one is better. That one, the grass is always greener on the other side. So for us to, I think for us to have a real shift in that area, yeah, it definitely needs to start from us as individuals, and then the family level, and then it goes on going up into the community and into the systems and the government.
100%. But I feel like it can never go into the family level without being individual. Never. You can't teach something you don't believe, because your kids will just smell the BS. Do you get what I mean? You can't. It's going to be impossible for you to teach something that you do not believe. But an unlearning has to happen, Chulu. A big unlearning has to happen of how we see ourselves, more importantly than anything. I feel like as Zambians, colonialism duped us. We apparently got free in 1964. And people assume that being free, being told that you're free is actual free, but it's not. Because what people don't see is, look at America. 400 years ago of slavery, and black men are being lynched in the street today. People thought that just because an Emancipation Act was signed, that even in England as well, like people like to think that in England there's no racism. England emancipated slaves even earlier than America's, but to today, black people still feel the effect of what racism is. You know, and this is what I say to people, like, one of the most complex things is being an immigrant, because you feel everyone's pain. You're no longer just in the bubble in which you grew up, just dealing with Zambian problems. You're both countries, wherever you go, however many countries you're like resident in or citizenship in. Your identities are created by the environments that you are. And that's the point. Our identity as Africans has been marred by a lot of the ideas that were taught to us. And it was ingrained within us that we needed to always look outward. That's how colonialism happened. We were not just colonized.
And also dependency.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Muma.
saying.
And also dependency, you know? Like, we always have to have our hand out. Like, please, save me, help me, give me.
So basically,
always
that's how colonization happened.
Yeah.
Colonization happened in such a way that you were then subdued and made to believe that you needed the person colonizing you, that you needed that help, that actually it is not you who has the resources, it is I, the person colonizing you, who has to help you with those resources. Then you'll be better. And even though we became emancipated and we became free in 1964 in Zambia, we failed to stand on our own. But I try to get them to understand that forgiveness cannot happen. You can't forgive you cannot happen if you can't forgive yourself. You first have to understand that we first need to forgive our ancestors and we need to forgive ourselves. I don't think that our ancestors were just sitting about and waiting to be colonized and selling us. That's one of the biggest lies that has been told to Africans, that our parents, our ancestors, our grandparents, who the hell would just sit around when you've seen somebody coming to kill you? What people do not know is even some of those same chiefs, lower chiefs, who did end up selling our ancestors, they just didn't do it on purpose. Their children were being raped in front of their eyes, their families being killed. It was a last resort. They could do nothing but sell whoever needed to be sold. And in reality, when either of us are put in a spot where it comes to the life or death of somebody you love, that is when you would see the true nature of who you are. Would you really die for your fellow man who's not your family? Let's be real. Do you know what I mean? So it's a much more complex story than what people make it out. Us as Africans and black people in the whole world as well, we carry a subtle anger that we don't talk about towards our ancestors. And then that same subtle anger is reflected in our own behavior as well, which is then internalized as hatred, self-hatred, which we don't even see. You know, growing up young, oh my goodness, I have to talk about this. I'm thinking my nose was so big because I was bullied about it at school. And so I would always sit there in the mirror doing this, pinching. It's only now that I thought about it. Like, I'll be pinching my nose so that my nose could be maybe sharper because my mom's got a sharp nose. And people always used to say, well, your mom's got like a Western person's nose, you know, things like that. And some people may think that was just like something small, but actually look at how messed up it actually it without even thinking, even though it hasn't affected me now, but it took, when I think of it now as an adult, that was an issue. That's messed up that I even thought that my nose is too big, my lips are too big, my hair is too coarse, I want to straighten it. I even straightened it. I remember coming back home one day, I had straightened my hair and it was completely blonde, and my mother wanted to kill me. She literally told me to stay outside, and she said I'm gonna sleep outside. I was outside. I came back home about 4:00, and I was outside until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she's like a grown woman now. That's what she told me, as Black parents are, you know. But anyway, they let me in the house. That's the point. But at that moment, when I asked myself, why did I do that? It's because of what I was seeing on TV. I thought blonde was beautiful and straight hair was better. And I've never ever confessed that to anybody before, or to myself. And it's only now I'm realizing, why did I need blonde hair? Because I didn't even really look good in it. You know, I hated waxing my hair because it will always burn my scalp. You know, I used to have those scabby things. It used to hurt. It was annoying. Even if I go to the salon, I've got the most sensitive scalp. You know, all those little and these are the subtleties that we talk about. And what I'm trying to say is, when you go back to our history, we've internalized things even for our ancestors in advance. And then we come along and we hear stories and we kind of hate them a bit because we think, oh, how does somebody just come and tell you in your own land? Because now also as well, there's the idea that we think we're woke now. Information, the fastness of information on the internet makes us feel that we're woke and we could have done different. We could have done better. How do you just allow somebody to do that? Then there's that anger that we carry, and we carry that anger, and then we see it in our own behaviors, the way we behave towards ourselves first. Forget about other people. There's a saying that I read that said something like, if you realize that almost every kind of anger that a person charges towards you has nothing to do with you, if you realize that they're projections that have nothing to do with you, you would not waste your energy responding or giving a reaction to them. I was like, wow, that's deep. That's so true. A lot of the time, if I come at you angry, it's deeper than just me being angry at you. There's an issue or something that's happened in that day or to me that's triggered, or something you say that's triggered that moment, you know?
Okay, so that is actually part 1 of our conversation on racism in Africa. For you to listen to the second half, please tune in next week. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation with Muma. These are my top 3 takeaways so far. Number 1, African countries have systems that continue to perpetuate racism. Number 2, every African is traumatized by racism. We just don't recognize it. Number 3, for us to get over colonialism, we must forgive ourselves and then forgive our ancestors. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes, Google, Snitcher, Pandora, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts. Please click that subscribe button. You will be helping us so much if you first subscribed, gave us a 5-star rating, and then reviewed the podcast. We love to hear your thoughts and, what did you think about this episode? I also love talking to you, so please find me on social media at Chulu by Design, or coming over to the Africana Woman tribe. We have a Facebook group and we dive deeper into these topics. So, see you next week for part 2 of this conversation around racism in Africa. Remember, my hope is that you love yourself, flaws and all, and attract the life that you desire. This has been a production of Ulendo Creative Media. You can find out more about their services on www.ulendocreative.com.